Greetings. So today I'm here with Ms.Girouard. We're talking about her book series we have here. We have several different books. But before we get started today, please introduce yourself to the...
I'm Donna Girouard. I've been teaching here at Livingstone for a little over 13 years. I'm originally from Massachusetts, and I am also an essayist and memoirist.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. So I see that we have this book collection here, this series. Can you tell me how did you get started with your series here? It looks like you have quite a few. So I know this takes a lot, but tell us how you got started.
Sure. Well, I volunteered at the Humane Society of Davie County in Mocksville for about a year, and I was the one who organized the PetSmart Saturdays. We would pull dogs, mostly dogs, from the kennel and bring them to PetSmart here in Salisbury and hope to get apps on the dogs and hope to get them adopted. And we did that every Saturday for about a year, and I would be looking for volunteers on Facebook and all of that to help. And but I was the one in charge of that. And after about a year of it, I'm not going to go into details, but something happened with PetSmart and the administration of the Humane Society, and they decided to stop using us.
Okay.
So I thought, well, there's got to be a way that I can combine my rescue efforts with my writing. So I decided to start the Felix series, and it is Felix and His Furry Friends series, and each book in the series focuses on one of my animals' rescue and an adoption experience.
How many pets do you have?
Well, now I have 5 cats and 1 dog. My dog is a corgi mix, but she's not in this series
Just
yet.
curious,
No, she's not in there, but because I just adopted her a couple of years ago. One of my dogs, though, Bitzer, and I have this one book here. This is Bitzer and the Beast Become Best Buddies, and that was, at the time, I had a German Shepherd named Hoodoo. And hoodoo, as in the opposite of voodoo, Hoodoo, yeah. And so my veterinarian suggested that I adopt a puppy to keep Hoodoo company. Hoodoo had been trained as a fight dog, and he had a hard time. And actually, he has one of those books is about him.
Okay.
And we needed to kind of tone him down. And my veterinarian, and this was in Massachusetts, he suggested that bringing a puppy in would help with that. He said he'll bond with the puppy. And my first thought was, yikes, or, this could really take a turn.
Yes.
But it turned out that he bonded with Bitzer. I adopted her from a kill shelter in Tennessee and had her shipped up to Massachusetts by train. And the two of them bonded, and actually Bitzer, this particular book here, shows how when you bring in a new puppy and you have an existing resident in the house that is an older dog, how you need to get those two to get together without having, accidents happen.
Yes. How was that experience? Because that right there, I know it was a little stressful on your end.
Oh, definitely was, because I was afraid he was going to attack her, of course. And one of the things that we did, each one had a crate, big metal crate, lots of ventilation, and we kept the crates side by side so they could have a scent of each other. Each dog was loose in the house separately, though, for about the first maybe month, but they slept in their crates next to each other. Then we got to the point where, okay, we're going to introduce them in the space together, loose, but Hoodoo, the shepherd, had a soft muzzle, so he could not turn on her and hurt her. That made us feel better.
Yes.
But it turned out to be unnecessary, because the two of them, and I have pictures, all these books have photographs, actually, too, that I took, most of them that I took. And so I have pictures about how he would kind of reach under her and kind of flip her, and then she'd run back and they'd play. They used to play tug of war with their toys. She got to the point where she could sleep in his crate with him. It was a period of several weeks for that to happen, but it really turned out to be a really great experience for both of them.
Was you nervous when they got into the crate together at all, or you was more comfortable?
I held my breath a few times. Yeah, definitely did that. And the way this particular book ends, Hoodoo had bad hips. He was quite elderly by the time. It was probably a couple of years after I had adopted Bitzer. And at one point, it got to in the yard, she would run circles and be exercising, and he would just kind of stand there and watch her, and he would wag his tail, but he couldn't run anymore. Yeah. And then sometimes she'd try to play with him, and he would cry out because his hips would hurt, and that was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking for us, and ultimately he did have to be put down. And so this particular book also deals with grief, not only of losing your dog, but how the other remaining dog also grieves. And because Bitzer did grieve when that happened.
I have a dog as well too. So when you just said that, I was thinking about maybe whenever that time comes. So that has to be very mournful. And another pet, playing with another pet, that has to be a serious situation to look at too. Because whenever you come home, the dogs, or whatever pet you have, they're always just happy. Some pets are happy to see you. Depends on the breed or like that. They be like, oh hey.
My cats are like, where have you been?
Yes, I've seen that before. Yes. That was a beautiful experience. Now, my next question I have for you is, seeing that you have all these books, what gave you the inspiration to actually write all these books? Because I know, how did you get into writing? Because that's not an everyday task.
Well, I loved to read as a kid, and I was always the one, back in my day, we had the Scholastic Book Club. I don't think.
Wait, pause. Wait. I did too in my day. I don't know if you know anything about R.L. Stein, but that was my author.
Oh, my daughter loved R.L. Stein. Okay.
I read all the books when I was in the library. A lot of people don't know. When I was in high school, middle school, I was an R.L. Stein person. Still am. So I know what you're talking about, Scholastic.
Well, I always had the biggest pile. And neither one of my parents graduated from high school. Okay. I was the first one in my family to go to college. So, but my parents wanted me to pursue my education. It was not even a question. I was going to go to college. That was as far as they were concerned. And so any books I wanted, I always got. They never said no. Beautiful. And I started my first experience with writing was actually opening my storybooks and just copying down what I saw into notebooks. And once I did that for quite a while. It was probably from like maybe age 6 through maybe age 8. And then I started writing my own stories. And the first thing I had published was in my school newspaper when I was in 9th grade. It was a short story that I wrote. And the assignment in the English class was that we were supposed to do a revisionist version of Edgar Allan Poe's The Telltale Heart. Put your own spin on it. For revisionism, you keep the same basic character types, same basic plot line, but you put your own spin on it. So I took The Telltale Heart and ran with it, and I didn't like the title that the school newspaper put on my work, but that was the only thing they changed about it. My English teacher actually submitted my piece to the school newspaper, unbeknownst to me. And when they accepted it, he came back and told me. Of course, I was thrilled. And then when I saw the paper, the school paper, and that was in the days of mimeograph machines, okay, when they were turning the crank and the smell of the ink and all of that, So when the newspaper came out and I saw my story, I was thrilled, and I thought, but where'd they get this title? That was not my title. But so there was a little bit of a disappointment there. But that was my first published piece. And I was one of the ones I kind of hung out with the artsy crowd in high school. And we used to write stories in study hall and pass our stories around study hall for other people to read them.
How was that experience? I didn't mean to cut you off, but how was that experience as well too? How did both of those experiences help you in general? Because I know that kind of gave you some fuel because you're here now. So how did that fuel you even further though?
Feedback. Just getting positive feedback. Okay. And then we'd go to study hall and it was like, got any stories today? Or what did what did you write? What was the last thing you wrote?
Ooh,
or so we were under the gun to produce more, right? Ooh. And then I took a creative writing class in my senior year in high school. Okay. And just loved it. And so I was on my way. That was it. The rest, as they say, is history, right?
See, the funny thing is, I'm in technology, and to be honest with you, I didn't touch technology in high school or middle school at all, so it was just one of the things I picked up in college. But that has to be beautiful, because basically you have your environment growing up was basically being artsy and creative, and just having that in your senior year. What did you go to school for, actually, at college?
Actually, I was a business major. My undergraduate degree is in business with a concentration in accounting, believe it or not.
I have so many questions right now, but okay, keep going.
I had a double major for quite a while with English. And I realized everybody was telling me you're never going to get a job out of college with an English major, with an English bachelor's degree. And I didn't know, because my father had been killed when I was 16, my mother was disabled, I didn't know if I would have the money to go to graduate school. So I decided, all right, you know what, I couldn't keep the two majors going. I dropped the English major and I stayed with business because I knew I'd get a job right out of college.
Okay.
That's what happened. So, and I did. I got a job as an accountant for Channel 4 in Miami. I moved to Miami, and I hated it. Absolutely hated it. So I decided to go back to graduate school for English, and I got my degree in comparative literature.
I'm sorry, that has blown me.
Can you see me as an accountant? You know me.
I'm sorry, no. So for those who don't know, this is actually my professor when I was here at Livingstone.
That's right.
And how sound she is in her craft and work here. When she just said that, that's blown my mind. So no, never. So when you just said that, I could not picture you being an accountant. No, like. So was you miserable during that experience? Really? So when you started going to school for your graduate school, how was that experience? Like, how did that propel you even further?
It was kind of weird going back, because at that point when I went back to school, I had a toddler, and at that point I'm not accounting anymore. I didn't do that. I had 2 part-time jobs to help pay for graduate school, and I worked in a beach shop, and I worked at McDonald's, believe it or not, as a graduate student, and that's how I put myself through graduate school, and the first time. So it was hard, and my daughter was like 2 when I started graduate school, and I finished. It took me about 3 years, and when during that process, she would be saying, "Well, Mommy, when can we do this? Or when are you going to do that?" It's hard to go back when you have a little child. I mean, it's tough, and when you're paying your own way, you're watching your money, and it's hard.
Working and watching the money go. Yes.
2 part-time jobs, and I'd be fortunately at the beach store. I could study when it was slow in the store, have my books out, and I'd be doing, working on my stuff and getting it done. So, but I worked evenings and I worked weekends and I went to school during the day.
So I was going to ask, did you get to do any creativity while using your master's program, or was it just
I didn't. It was all research. It was all literature, researching and doing lit crit and research papers and that kind of thing. I didn't write creatively at all. No.
What is lit crit?
Literary criticism.
Okay. Oh.
Yeah. Yep.
So.
So I took a break from creative writing for quite a while there.
So what was your first opportunity with your degree once you graduated?
Say that again?
What was your first opportunity when you graduated with your degree?
When I got my master's degree, I got a job teaching English at a small college in South Florida in Boca Raton. It's Lynn University. An international college. We had students from literally all over the world, and there was money there. These were the kids of rich families, and then, like I said, they came from all over the world. We had a prince who was flown in, and the helicopter landed on the roof of one of the buildings, one of the classroom buildings. I mean, that's the kind of money we're talking about. And it's interesting because here I am driving this 1981, like 10-year-old at the time, Firebird, and all of the faculty, you could always tell who was faculty and who was students, because the students had Ferraris, and all of these hotshot vehicles, and we'd be driving in our jalopies, and so you could always tell, you'd see the parking lot, you knew who was who, basically. I will say that the college did pay pretty well, though. All things considered, we were treated pretty well there.
That is interesting. I couldn't imagine a student just. And you said a helicopter? No.
Oh yeah. That was this Prince something from somewhere. Yeah, I don't remember now. That was years ago, but yeah, flown in.
That is interesting. So let's get into more of your book series, because that is an interesting background that you have. So let's talk about your most recent book right here.
Okay.
The Mother After All?
My Mother After All. Well, COVID was hard.
Correct.
For pretty much everybody.
Yes, no way around it at all.
No. And this book actually deals with loss and deals with recovering from loss. And I actually, a couple of the essays I wrote pre-COVID, but a lot of this came out of COVID. And I lost my mother in 1996, and she was my champion and my best support, always. I don't mean financially, but emotional support. And I had an essay published in, I'm going to say maybe 2010, 2011. It was not long after I got here to Livingstone. And it was in a literary journal, And the essay was My Mother After All. And it's a very lyrical essay, and it deals about mother-daughter relationships and how a lot of girls, when they are, and this may be true for guys as well, but of course I can't speak to that, but a lot of girls, when they hit junior high, get very rebellious. And your mother is really, for a lot of us, the mother is your first really strong female role model. And when you are in your rebellious stage, you find all kinds of fault with her. And again, this may be true for men as well, and I can tell by your expression, maybe it is. But you reach a point in your late 20s or maybe in your early 30s, it varies, where you realize, how much this person really has added to your life, and how much you really have come to depend on that person, and how much you are really like that person.
So I agree.
So I'm sure it does apply to guys as well. So that essay talked about my relationship with my mother, and then in turn my relationship with my daughter, and how our relationship was much different from the one I had with my mother. And as I said, I had the essay published. It was published in a small journal called Writer's Block out of Texas A&T. And so that was one of the first essays I had published after I came here to Livingstone. And I was thrilled. I remember running into Dr. Randall's office the day I got the email back. And that was, at that time, she was our chair in the English department. And I ran in, I said, "Hey, I got something published." I was all excited and showed her, the email and all of that. Anyway, and that was several years ago. But during COVID, when I was suffering other types of losses, of course, I was remembering my mother and missing my mother because I didn't have her to lean on. I didn't have her to depend on and go to for emotional support. One of the worst things that happened to me during COVID, and I hope I can say this without breaking down, my stepdaughter, and I consider her my daughter, so I'm going to say my daughter. My daughter got pregnant just before COVID and had her daughter just before COVID. And I was, as Graham, I was babysitting. And during COVID, we lost her. My grandbaby died of SIDS. And it was, she was with me at the time. I was babysitting. I'm the one who found her in her crib. She was 5 months old. So, and not to compare, of course, because you can't compare these, but just maybe a few months later, I lost Bitzer. And Bitzer was 14 at the time. I had Bitzer since she was 3 months old. And so I lost her as well. Just prior to losing my granddaughter, my husband at the time decided he wanted to end our marriage. So there was a lot of loss. And as a writer, I said, I need to write about the loss. And so My Mother After All is a collection of essays about loss and about recovery after loss.
Was that was it hard for you to put the thoughts and the feelings on the paper?
Yeah, and actually, in my first collection of essays, I was, and that is The Other Side, Closing the Door. And I thought it would close the door, but clearly it did not close the door because I needed another. Yeah, right, exactly, part two. I was estranged from my blood daughter for a while. And one of the essays that I wrote for The Other Side was about that estrangement. And at that time, I was working at Livingstone. My office was right here in Dodge. And there was one night I was finishing that essay, and I was sitting in my office. It was like maybe 8 o'clock, 8:30 at night. And I was finishing this essay, Something We Can't Mend is the name of the essay, because we didn't mend it, as it turns out. We thought we did, but we didn't. And I was sitting in my office. The last part of the essay is kind of a stream of consciousness. And I was sitting there sobbing as I was typing the essay. And so yeah, it can be, one of my mentors said, your best work comes when you bleed on the page.
I've heard that before, yes.
So I have bled on many pages.
I can understand.
But there is a feeling of relief afterwards. Once you get it out, the essay is done, to some degree you can close the door, at least maybe not firmly shut, but maybe it's ajar. You know, it's just almost shut. One of the other things that happened when I was writing this, and as I said, I had my marriage was done, and so I was writing about that loss as well. And I reconnected with my high school crush online while I was in the process of writing this book. It was towards the end. And we talked on the phone, and I just happened to find him, and we talked on the phone, and we had arranged, he was still in Massachusetts, where I'm from. We were going to get together that following summer. I was thinking about taking a trip up to Massachusetts, and then I didn't hear from him for about 3 weeks. And I thought, well, okay, maybe he found somebody, maybe he just decided not to continue our conversation. I went on Facebook, and I went to his page, and there were all of these condolences. And I said, you have got to be kidding me. And I realized as I went down, that he had passed. And I reached out to his brother. I didn't know him very well, but I reached out to Andrew, his brother. Stephen was his name, my high school crush. And I actually had mentioned him in the other side as well, because our first confrontation, but our first experience of getting together happened in 6th grade, believe it or not. He asked me out and I turned him down because we were too young. And I said, you know, he said, the actual sentence was, do you love me like Kim loves Richard, kids in our class? And I said, no. I looked him in his face, I said, no, I don't love you. I mean, we're 11 years old. So, but then I realized in high school, wow, he's hot. What happened? The boy is gone and the man is here, but at that point he was dating somebody else. So anyway, I reached out to his brother Andrew and I said, what happened? And he said he had a massive heart attack. It came out of nowhere and he dropped dead right there in the street. And so it's in here. That essay is in here as well. And so it's all really, I don't want to make it sound like it's a sad, depressing book. It sounds like maybe it might be, but it ends on a positive note. Okay. It's just, you know, how you can kind of deal with and rise above that. You're never going to get over it. I mean, my mother died in 1996. I'm still not over it. And you don't get over things like that. But you can move on. You can still function, you know?
So with this being said here, I like your collection. What I wanted to ask though is also, how do you find your books? How can anyone purchase or order the books that you have here?
Well, I have copies, as you can see, but they are also all on Amazon. Okay. I have an author page on Amazon as well. So if you go into Amazon and you simply type in my name, all the books come up.
Okay. All right. Now, this being said, I know this is going to be a tough question. Which one was your, which one is your baby for the books, and which one was the harder experience to write overall? Which one is like your go-to baby?
Now, when you say go-to, but you mean my best, which one do I think is my best work?
Yes.
I would say this one.
This one?
Is my best work.
Which one was the one that was more strenuous?
The other side.
The other side?
Some of these were hard to write, the animal stories, especially the one about Bitzer. I try to make these a little bit, because they're for children, so I try to make them a little bit more fun. Yes. I'm trying to raise money for the local rescues with these books, so all the money from these goes right to the local rescues. But the other side, which is the first book that I had, the first essay collection that I had published, the first edition I self-published. Then a small press from Salem, Massachusetts saw my work on Amazon and reached out to me and offered to do a second edition, and that they would publish. It's Salem House Press in Salem, Massachusetts. And they said, the thing is, you need to there were a couple of edits that they wanted made, but they wanted a new cover. And so they wanted, now I had a graphic artist
I just realized that there are birds.
These are different.
What kind of birds?
Yeah, these are different. Well, the crow, and I wish I had short sleeves because I do have my crow tattoo here. But the crow is a recurring symbol in the other side.
I see that one too.
Yeah. So I had the graphic artist named Brandon Coley, who did the first edition. I couldn't find him. So I found a graphic artist. I had actually volunteered to be an editor, one of the editors on it was a book done for charity. It was a collection of short stories, and it was done to raise funds for the family of a trans girl who had been beaten and killed. and this was in England. And I happened to spot it online. This was a few years back, but I happened to spot the story online, and they were looking for editors to volunteer. So I volunteered, and I met the graphic artist who would then do the second edition of my second book, The Other Side. And I really, she's actually going to do. Actually, she did the one for the book I'm working on now. This is also her work. And we can talk about that in a few minutes. But anyway, I contacted her. She's a wonderful graphic artist, and she is a novelist as well. She's a writer and a novelist. And so she kind of kept the crow, that symbol on the cover, but I was pleased when Salem House Press decided to do that for me. But honestly, I've done better on my own. They really didn't do a whole lot for me, and I'm not trying to down traditional publishing, but I think sometimes you do better if you self-publish.
That's what I was going to go ahead and ask about too, because when you said people was editing and stuff like that, I know that kind of takes away from what you really wanted to do, but people have their standards when it comes to publishing.
Sure.
Too.
And the changes he were really not too intrusive.
Okay.
But I just, when it came to My Mother After All, I said, I considered going back to Salem House Press, but I changed my mind. I said, you know what, this one is just so personal that I really just wanted to do it on my own. And the cover is just from an old photograph. That is my mother and I. And we're in matching dresses.
I see.
And that was a picture from our family album. And I know he would never have gone along with that, because he would say, oh, it's blurry, and it's, he wouldn't have liked it. But I just decided really to do this one on my own again.
Okay, as a PhD student, I understand you want your own out there. Then whenever somebody edited, I don't like this, and this, but I really want this. Yes, I can.
And it brought up the whole thing about my, the 9th grade story where they changed my title. I'm like, it came back, right?
So tell me more about My Sister Wants Her Trailer Back.
Well, okay, this is a complete departure from anything else I've ever done.
Okay.
While I was, during the time that I've been separated from my husband, and now we are divorced, of course I turned to online dating. And ironically, that's how he and I had met, believe it or not, in 2005, he and I met on plentyoffish.com.
Okay.
Yes, it still existed even in 2005. A lot of people can't believe that, but Plenty of Fish has been around for years, yes. A lot of the other ones that existed back then are long gone, but for some reason, Plenty of Fish has existed. But anyway, I'm online, and I had a lot of dating experiences, and have had a lot of dating experiences over the last 6 years, and I would tell my friends, "Oh, you are not going to believe what happened on this date," and so I'd start.
I've been there, yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. Okay.
I've been there.
And I mean, some of the experiences, I had them laughing. And somebody, actually, Ms. Snyder, former English professor here at Livingstone, we are still good friends, and we still get together on occasion. And she was the one, she and a friend of hers, we were at her house, and I'm telling this story about how, should I tell the story? You might want to end. Well, I don't know if you need to edit this out later, but
we'll see.
It's clean. It's not. But so, all right. I met this guy on Plenty of Fish, and we dated a few times. And I could tell this really wasn't going to go anywhere. And I said, we're just a nice guy. And we were still friends, but nice guy. I could tell it really just wasn't going to happen for me, or maybe him, but whatever. Anyway, and so we were kind of playing it cool at this point. We had kind of taken a little break. I'm at home, and I got a text one afternoon, and he said, so, hey, can you spare a couch and a shower for a few weeks? And I looked at my phone. I had to put it down. I'm like, I can't even address that right now. And so I didn't get back to it until about 3 hours later, because I kept trying to figure out what I was going to say. Because my first reaction was, oh, heck no! But I went back to it, picked up the phone, and I said, so I know your daughter is in the area. Why are you asking me? Now this guy had a mobile home that he was living in on High Rock Lake. So I said, well, what's wrong with where you were living? And he said, well, the trailer was my sister's, and it's her vacation home. And my sister wants her trailer back. So I'm telling this story to Ms. Snyder and her friend, and they're practically rolling on the ground. And somebody said, you have got to write this book. This is a book. And one of them said, and what a great title that would be. So I was going to say, his sister wants her trailer back, but I thought, no, you know what? My graphic artist made the bubble, the dialogue bubble here. So it's like he's actually saying, my sister wants her trailer back, and the subtitle is Online Dating After 55, because I had so many women who are in their 50s and older saying, I don't know how to do this. And actually, Ms. Snyder was one of them. If you remember, Ms. Snyder lost her husband while she was here. And about a year after he died, I walked into this one particular morning, I walked into her office, and she was sitting at her desk in tears. And I said, Debbie, what's wrong? And she said, I'm so lonely. And she said, but I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from here. So I said, well, let me tell you about online dating. So I sat down and we started talking about online dating, and I thought, I'm sure there are other women who have been married. She had been married for 38 years. And I said, I'm sure there are other women who are in their 50s and 60s, and now they're either widowed or they're divorced, and they have no clue where to go from here. What do I do? And once I find it, how do I do it? So I thought, all right, but this time I'm going to try humor. Because I don't want it to sound angry, bitter, mean. There's a little snarkiness in there because, it's me. So there's got to be a little snarky.
Hear me out. I had to get this question out. Does he know this is about him possibly, or is it kind of...
Well, see, this one hasn't been completed yet. I'm still,
okay.
Right now I'm in chapter 10 of 13 possible chapters. I'm not using real names.
Oh, I can understand.
No. Now, I always did in my other books.
Okay.
But in this one, no. I don't want to get sued, so I'm not using real names. But if he reads it, he'll probably be able to tell that he's the one.
I can understand.
See, the way the book is set up, the first third of the book is all the how-tos with online dating. Ooh. Things you need to be aware of. Mm-hmm. How you can tell, if somebody's legit, that kind of thing. How you create your profile, how you create your, even your username, what pictures to put in, what pictures not to put in, things like that. And the middle of the book, those are the caveats. Those are the tales. And again, they're anonymous. But those are the experiences of what some of these dates can be like. Because I did have a few brief relationships. I even hate to use that word because I don't even know if you could call them that. But there were a few that I dated for, 5 months, 6 months, something like that. Because there were a lot of one and done dates, don't get me wrong. Lots of one and done. But the ones I did date for a little bit longer, they're in the middle of the book.
Okay.
And then the last part of the book is what you really have to be careful for. Again, the catfish. And how to spot a catfish, what a catfish is, what a catfish is looking for. They want your money, and how to be careful and safe when you're dating online.
Not to throw my age out there. I think when I became a professor, because it's very rare that somebody becomes a professor at a younger age. So I used to tell people I'm a professor. Oh, hey, how you doing? No, this is not kind of show here. So I used to go out in public bars. My friends were like, oh, this is a professor. I'm like, if you only really knew. But hi, how you doing? Yeah, I know I'm a professor.
Yeah, I hesitated even saying on my online dating profile that I'm a professor.
I had to learn. I did that one time. I was like, oh, this is the wrong magnet. No, so I get it. That's why I had to throw it out there.
Well, see, now, and in your case, maybe they think, maybe he makes a lot of money. Now, in my case, because I said English professor, I got, oh, well, I guess I better be careful what I say around you. That's the attitude that I was getting from men. So I thought, maybe that's not a good idea.
I got the... Oh my God, I gotta be sharp, crystal clear. He knows everything. He's book smart. Hey, I'm a regular person. That's where I work. I don't do this after hours. But people have that persona that, of everything. I'm not gonna lie, I kind of have a persona for people I have a profile for everyone almost in different majors. Like, 'cause, you know, everyone acts a little bit differently. Even with the English, a little bit artsy. My field of CIS, or technology, mathematics, we're so logical. So it's just like, oh, you're a robot. So when people kind of tell me, oh, what'd you go to school for?
You are so not a robot. You are so not.
If you see some of my classmates, you like, oh, I was one of them little fish that got away from the pack. But anyway, but yeah, so I kind of, what I learned, I did online dating for like a year, because like, there's nothing in Salisbury. When I moved here, I was like, what is there to do? So I tried the online dating. I was like, there is nothing here. So when I started looking at Salisbury, I was like, there's really nothing here. So when I put professor, I got all the dings. I was like, oh yeah, I'm not doing this. So I completely understand.
Well, and you know, I get a lot of hits from the Charlotte area, but and then they always say, and I mentioned this in the book, oh, distance is not a problem. Oh yeah, you know what, it is, because then suddenly they don't want to drive on 85 in rush hour traffic to get from Charlotte to where I live in Salisbury. Like, no. They maybe do it for the first date, and then they're like, no, you know what, it's too far to drive. So now I'm at the point where when I see Charlotte, it's just, nope, swipe left. I know, because I know it's going to be an issue, so I don't even go there.
Now, with this last book here, that should wrap this session up, just want to know if you would give some advice to anybody who's aspiring to be a writer, since you're writing this book right here, what information or tidbits would you give them to move forward writing?
Well, I would say, and actually some of my creative writing students will ask me this too, and I think if you're going to start in the writing field, and you want to be in the creative writing field specifically, your best bet, before you even start books, your best bet is to go to New Pages online, and you look for what the journals and magazines and literary magazines are looking for. They post what they want, their submissions that they want, and submit your poetry or your essays or your short stories first. Because my first book here, The Other Side, is 15 essays. Half of those were published in online journals before I even put the book together. So that's what my advice would be. Start out with the journals and submit your work, and then you feel for what they're looking for. You start getting some publications under your belt. I've had probably about a baker's dozen of my essays published in online journals. So you get that experience that way. And then if you want to put a collection together, an essay collection or a short story collection or a poetry collection or whatever, you got that start. And it makes you more legit, so that when Salem House Press, for instance, saw my work online, they saw that half of the essays had already been published in journals.
So it was just an easy pipeline.
Right.
Oh, okay. What other advice would you give too? For anybody want to
read.
Ooh.
Read. And you know what, the best, I saw this on Facebook, because I belong to a couple of writers groups on Facebook, and in one of them, somebody said, I've got writer's block, which has never been my problem. My problem is self-discipline, sitting down and actually writing it.
I was going to ask about that too.
I never have writer's block. I have more ideas and things than I could ever write. But she said, what can I do when I have writer's block? And I said, read poorly written books. Because you'll be reading those and thinking, wow, I could do way better than this. So that's your motivation to write your stuff. Read the garbage, and then you'll want to do better.
I can imagine. Well, thank you for this opportunity today, Ms.Girouard. I appreciate you. I really I didn't know this side about you, and I really love seeing this side, from the kids' books to these books as well too. I really appreciate it, and I cannot wait to see this part 2 right here when this was released.
Hopefully going to finish this over this. I shot for winter break, and it didn't happen, obviously.
I understand.
That was just So yeah, and I tend to be a slow writer because, and I tell my students all the time, do as I say, don't do as I do. Because what I do is edit as I write. And that's bad, because it bogs you down. It slows you down. I just can't do it any other way, though. And even I made the transition from a pad and a pen to the computer. I write everything now on my laptop. But I said, if I'm stuck on a sentence, I can't move on. And that's bad. Because it slows me down. So I get it done eventually, but I edit and edit and edit and edit. And I keep going back. So hopefully this one will be done this summer. That's my goal, to get it done. So, and again, I'm up in the air on this one though, whether I want to self-publish or whether I want to try to submit it. Because this one might be this one might be the hit. You know, you never know.
You never know.
Everybody's saying, "Oh, there's a market for this." Because this is different. Because there's a lot of books on online dating, but not online dating over 55, which is a different animal. So,
A new market.
so who knows? You know, this one might be the one that makes me famous.
Okay.
No spurs against you, but you know, this one might get me on Oprah.
We all start somewhere though, so that's what I say.
I loved this interview and I really appreciate this. But yeah, if I can be on, you know, or you know, one of the, like, I'm trying to think who's the big one now? Not Maury. I don't want to be on his show. But Oprah or I don't know who's doing it now. I don't watch those talk shows.
I don't even watch TV. Too much homework.
No, see, I don't either. I'm kind of behind in that. But anyway, this one might be the one to get me on TV.
Anything's possible. But once again, I do appreciate you. I love this, and we'll follow back with this book once you finish and have it published. But once again, thank you, and I hope you have a great opportunity to finish this book. And look, if y'all looking for any books, please make sure you take a look online. Can you tell them where to find it one more time?
Yeah. Again, you know, just type my name into Amazon, and you will find the list of books. My author page is in there. And again, I do want to say the children's books do all the proceeds. It used to be I used to have a percentage. Now I do all the proceeds from the children's books do go to the rescues. So, you know, please consider supporting the local rescues, and because they need it. They need the money. Most of the people who work there are volunteers, and they're doing the best they can with what little they have. Donations, you know, charitable donations, that kind of thing. So please consider helping your local rescues.
All right, thank you for this. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Be back next time.